Okay, it is 7 o'clock and I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Please rise and let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mrs. Junk. Here. Mr. Carey.
Here.
Mr. Mankowski.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Dr. Lawler's absent, but he'll be arriving later.
Thank you very much. So with 6 members present, we do have a quorum. Are there any board members who would like to move anything from the consent agenda to new business tonight? No? Okay, then we're not moving anything. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Yes, presented.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk. Aye. Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, Board and Superintendent Sleuths, Dr. Layton.
Yes, we'd like to recognize our Hall of Fame inductees for the 2022-2023 school year. They are not with us tonight. They travel from near and far, but we have a 2013 state wrestling champion, Dan Gores. He will be recognized as an automatic inductee based on being a state champion. And we also have 4 members of our 4x8 state champion 2013 track team. The names are Connor Johnson, Luis Acosta, Kyle Carter, and Nathan Kucera. They will be recognized at the May Senior Sports Awards. That date is still being finalized, but those are our Hall of Fame inductees for the 22-23 school year. And if you remember, we do have a committee that meets 4 times a year to consider applications, vote on them, and then also when we vote, we determine at which event they're going to be recognized. And with all of them having an athletic background, they will be recognized at the Senior Sports Awards in May when that date is finalized. So we've already contacted those individuals. They know, and they're just waiting to hear from us on the awards date, and we'll be here to be recognized. So congratulations to our Hall of Fame inductees.
Awesome. It's very strange that it's turned over and now classmates of my children are on the Hall of Fame list. We know these kids. Okay.
That was
Dr.
all.
Fuchs, did you have anything or anyone?
Thank you.
Okay. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items. The approval of parameters for accounts payable and payroll for March 2023, the approval of the treasurer's report from February 2023, the approval of minutes of the February 27th, 2023 regular meeting, the approval of personnel, the approval of destruction of audio recordings from closed session meetings from September 2021, the approval of our IHSA membership, the approval of the Board of Education student art purchase for 2022-23, the approval of our joint agreement for the Fox Valley Career Center, and the approval of auditing services for 2022-23 through 2024-25. And the following informational items: the student suspension data report and the Freedom of Information Act or FOIA report. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Junk. Aye. Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Okay. Okay, this is our first opportunity for public comment. There are 2 opportunities in the meeting, one at the beginning and one at the end. And the board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into a debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you do so at the microphone. State your name and the village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. And we will actually have we do have a couple of public forums tonight in addition to these 2 general public comment sessions. So we do have people sign up, and the first person on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Jerry Elliott.
My name is Jerry Elliott, and I've lived in 50 years. My wife and I have lived at 39W686 Prairie Street in Aurora, and that's a citizen of Sugar Grove Township. I pay a little over $4,000 a year yearly of tax money to the school district. This investment leads me to offer my following financial comments as to what actions are you, the board members and Superintendent Linden, doing to advocate for fiscal oversight to the use of my $4,000. I've worked with Dr. Julianne Fuchs for several years and find her to be an exceptional person on her job. She has kept you and the public informed of school business, even receiving awards for such exceptional management of daily business finances and conditions of our enterprise. Well done, Julianne. It seems this board has entered into a contract with Prudent Man Advisors, PMA, who act as custodians of my $4,000. These advisors do not answer to the taxpayers. Instead, they are presenting a financial picture to justify the district's going into debt, another $57.5 million for the referendum. Within this advisor, they're pushing out payments of bond 2009B to year 2027 and 2029, further compounding interest on this debt to a total of $16,135,000 to pay off a loan of $4,620,000. That's 16 to pay off 4. You board members authorized this contractual bond and then stood by watching the compound interest grow to a massive 350%. You did nothing to help Dr. Fuchs, nor me, the taxpayer, to avoid such a $11.5 million waste of money. Neither did the powerful PMA people. That's hardly prudent, I would say. So now you board members and school leaders are going forward with an additional crippling debt to the tune of $57.4 million. Raising the debt service tax levy another $2.8 million to $15,160,000 for 5 years running, and pulling us taxpayers on the hook for a total debt of $175 million. This proposed project is poorly timed by you as board members when you know inflation is rampant and people are barely getting by. We even got problems with our banks. Instead, this $57 million beautification package, which adds to the inflation locally, not only lacks compassion for property owners, but is predatory to us taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Dan Nagel.
Hello, my name is Dan Nagel. I've lived here about 75 years or so. Sugar Grove Township was on the township board about 40 years. Anyway, short and sweet, we have to have some control on our expenditures. And being the school district, and I was on the township board, we took many, many interesting conversations, at least I did. And I says, you have to look at what you're voting for. You have to look at the financials, and then you got to turn around and really think and ask questions. But we have more people here than I we have seen, at least I have seen for a while. So I'm just asking that there are a lot of taxpayers that are fed up and overextended themselves. I don't know, that's not everyone's problem, but it's a problem that I know the township has seen something like general assistance go up like, 30, 40%. And so we're going to have that, but the times are tough. So it's showing the food thing is really busier than hell. So anyway, short and sweet. That's why, please, if there's any way, look through that, see if there's any possibility of cutting somewhere. And I know Juliana's she's known me for many, many years. It's a tough way. So anyway, but there's something's going to have to change, or the valuation on your housing will start leveling off. And we just farm. So all I'm saying is I sort of been on with the township, was on long enough, and I seen it happen twice where they start leveling out for years, and people always feel that's their bank that they're going to be able to grow with. So anyway, I just would ask, please, but I understand where you're at. So thank you much for listening.
Thank you for your comments. So those are the only two people that are signed up, but are there other people that wish to speak in this first public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the first item of new business, which is the approval of the driver's education fee that includes a public hearing. So the way we're going to work, I'm going to open the public hearing. Dr. Fuchs is going to give us a brief overview. Then we will ask for public comment on this one topic. And after the public comment, then I'll close the public hearing, and then that's when the board will ask questions. Okay. So at this time, it is 7:12, and I'm calling to order the public hearing on the driver's education fee. Dr. Fuchs.
Great, thank you very much. Each year, we go through the process to ensure that the driver education fee that we're charging our students is appropriate. We've maintained the fee at the maximum rate that the state of Illinois allows for many years, well before 2011 when the law changed to require this part of the process. If you look at my summary below, I've given you the revenues and the expenditures for specifically related to driver's education. You can see the local fees that we collect, and then there's also a state reimbursement. The state reimbursement is listed as 2020, 2021 because it's a year in arrears like all of our other reimbursements. So I do the year that I have the most accurate data for. We would have received that reimbursement in 21-22. That's why it's listed there, but it's for the prior year. So we collected a little over $82,600. Our expenditures include salaries, benefits, repairs, supplies, materials, insurance, at a little over $395,000. That makes a net of about $312,000 expenditures over revenues. Then I look at the state reports. We educated 209 kids in the classroom. The net cost per student is just under $1,500, and we're charging the maximum rate at $250. So it's my recommendation that the board maintain the maximum rate of $250 for driver's education. And this is an opportunity for, as you mentioned, President Witt, for the public to share their feedback.
Yes, so now we'll open the floor to public comments on the driver's education fee only for 2023-24, keeping in mind the guidelines stated earlier in the meeting. Would anyone like to speak on the driver's education fees? Okay, if not, I will close the public hearing. It is 7:14, and now board members can ask Dr. Fuchs questions. If they want.
Where's the cost of the car actually in this?
We haven't bought a car since 2014.
Okay.
We're gonna put one on next year's budget.
Okay, so that number will then fall in that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it'll be its own line next year, the year after,
Okay.
because next year we'll report this year. The
Gotcha.
year after you'll report next year.
So we're budgeted to buy a car in
23, 24.
Gotcha.
We're gonna put one in.
Okay.
Yep, but we haven't bought one. We have two 2014s and a 2011.
Okay.
3 cars.
Does the 11, does that get traded in or does that go to Fox Valley for the?
Gets traded.
Okay.
We use it for trade.
Thank you.
You know, it's 2014s.
That's it.
Yeah, I
I'm not
can't
gonna hold you
remember
to
what the third one is. I feel like we're traded one of the 2014s. So it must be a 2014. Anyway, it's been a long time.
Okay.
So the two largest numbers, the salaries and benefits,
Mm-hmm.
we employ teachers specifically for driver's ed.
Yes, we do.
And so that's what they do full time.
Yes.
How many teachers?
Christina? I believe it's 2.5, but I'm not positive. It also includes their extra hours for behind the wheel.
Anyone else? Anything? Adam, are you still thinking about it?
Kind of, it just seems
Okay.
seems high for 2.5 teachers, 307,000.
It also includes their behind the wheel hours. So when they go out after school on Saturdays and all summer long, it includes those hours.
And so that they get paid like a
An
time
hourly,
and a half
an hourly.
hourly rate.
Mhm. And we negotiate that. It's a negotiated rate with the Teachers Association.
And it's the same rate as all the other extra work that happens
That is
by
correct.
teachers. Okay.
Well, it just seems,
I don't want to cut you
I
off.
guess what it seems to me like if that's their job, then as part of their job, those driving hours should be consumed by that. But I guess there's legal obligations outside of this where we have to pay them for those excessive hours. Correct? We can't just say, "Hey, you're a driver's ed teacher, so you're going to have these weekend hours." Right? I mean, it's not that
Correct.
simple.
It's not.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the attached resolution for driver's ed to maintain the 2023-24 driver's education fee for Kaneland High School at $250 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons. Aye. Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk. Aye. Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Move on now to J2, which is where we're going to seek input for the use of the ESSER 3 funds, and it also includes a public hearing, so if you'll give me a minute.
Same spiel.
Yep, gonna open it, talk about it, open it, presentation, public comment, close it, comments. Okay, so it is 7:19, and I am now gonna open the public hearing regarding the ESSER 3 fund expenditures. Dr.
So
Fuchs.
with COVID, the pandemic, the federal government has been generous in terms of helping to support the costs associated with the pandemic. We've received 3 rounds of funding. Actually, we've received 2. We have an allocation for the 3rd. The first 2 rounds did not require the public hearing. However, the board did receive notice and act on the use of those funds as well. ESSER 1 was pretty easy to spend at that time. It was $153,972. We did it for the PPE, cleaning, supplies, water bottle filling stations, remote learning, and other emergency operations. That money went very quickly at that time. ESSER 2 provided more money, $519,069. Similarly, we were still buying PPE. At that time, we were buying specialized PPE for our music classes. We had our test to stay employees where we were testing students, their supplies. Enhanced cleaning still was taking place, and then more remote learning and licenses for that. So those were the things that we spent on ESSERs 1 and 2. ESSER 3 has even more money allocated to us. It's $1,276,139. This money needs to be spent by September of 24. September 24. So we are putting together our plan for the use of this money. I listed on the board report I think it's 16 things that we can spend the money on. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to hear from our public if they have any of these things that are more important than another. Additionally, we are seeking feedback and input from students, teachers, administrators, and the KEA and SPEAK. We've gathered some of the information already, but we still have more in which to gather, which we will be doing between now and the end of April, pretty much. So at this time, if you would seek the public's input.
Okay, so we'll now invite public comments on the district's intended use of the ESSER $3, keeping in mind the guidelines for public comments stated earlier in the meeting. Would anyone like to speak? Okay, if not, then I will close the public hearing at 7:22. And now the board can discuss.
So you got a
If
whole,
there's not a recommendation tonight, we aren't voting on this. We're just
Seeking input.
seeking input.
what are the, just generally, what are the limits of what we can use these funds on? Can we use it to build a building? There are no, the parameters?
There are parameters. They're listed in the board packet.
Okay.
They primarily, the government primarily wants you to use the money to bridge the learning loss gap from when the students were at home and now as a result of the pandemic.
Okay.
They've identified that you should use it for extra supplies and materials, interventions, definitely targeting certain population groups, groups such as those who are McKinney-Vento eligible, homeless,
Okay.
disabilities, racial and ethnic minorities, English learners, and children and youth in foster care. So if you can target any of the monies for those specific populations, that would be ideal. You can also use it for cleaning and sanitizing purposes. You can use it for educational technology so that if we need to go remote for whatever reason, students are ready to do that. That can be both on hardware, software, and connectivity, making sure that our network is strong and secure for doing that. You can provide mental health services and supports. You can administer and use high quality assessments.
Okay.
You can provide information to families and parents. You can also use it for improving school facilities, specifically HVAC, or anything that would reduce environmental hazards. You can update air conditioning filtering systems, purifications, doors and windows, which, you know, we've done that. And other strategies regarding anything in line with the Center for Disease Control. Does that give you kind of an
Thank you.
overview?
Yeah.
Yep,
How long do we have to spend it?
till September of
You did,
2024.
you did say that, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Julianne, am I reading this wrong? So number 3, providing principals and other school leaders with the resources necessary to address the needs of their individual schools. That's incredibly broad. That's, yeah?
That's
Oh,
pretty big.
okay. I just
Does it
wanna make sure
include
there wasn't a
staffing?
typo or something.
I don't read one.
So that's a great question, Teresa. It could include extra staff. However, I would highly not recommend that you use it for staffing
Because it
because
runs
it is
out.
one-time money. You could hire somebody, but then you don't have to, but the district would want to be able to sustain that. So it's never a best practice to use one-time monies or things that need to be sustained unless if you have a plan for that sustainability.
So one of the things I think we've heard a lot, I don't want, you know, the point is for us to seek feedback, not for us to decide what we're gonna do with it exactly, you know,
Not yet.
just unilaterally. But, so what we've heard a lot from in public comment and in emails to us and things like that, people are very concerned about the mental health, recovery of students post-COVID and the learning gap that, the increased learning gap, I should say, that was created. So when I asked about staffing, I guess I was thinking as a recovery effort, hire more social workers to work with the students to get us back up to where, or get us to a good point so that it wouldn't be an ongoing, we wouldn't hire, 3 new continuing social workers, but we might need some people to bridge a gap or to make those things happen. So, and then of course, keeping in mind the people with special needs or in special categories.
Yeah, special
Sorry,
populations, yes.
special
Yep.
populations. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
So if you hired somebody, but that would only be hiring them for 1 year.
At this point, yes.
Have the behavioral facilitators that we hired asked for anything else? What is their what is their perspective when it comes to mental health services? We've seen a lot more uptick on kids getting in trouble at all grades. Is there anything that they're asking for that?
I'll have to find out.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you mentioned HVAC, and then you mentioned specifically like filters and stuff. So I know we have HVAC needs throughout the district. Is it general, or are we? I mean, is it specific to those filters and things related to COVID? Like, would we be able to take care of some of those systems that? I mean, a couple of our elementary schools don't have them, and potentially need them, right?
Yes, it can definitely be used as long as the goal of the HVAC system is to, the clean air and to bring in outside air. All of our buildings have working systems, but many of them are aging, and that's what we're looking at replacing some of.
And these ESSER funds would qualify.
A portion of them. They've got certain percentages that you have to use on different things, but a portion could be used for the upkeep of those. Yeah.
Is there any way that to facilitate getting the feedback that we could put something on the website with
Yeah, we're
either with these
required.
things or with other things and just and have a place for people to go? Because if we say it, a lot of people don't hear it. But if we could send out an email blast saying, we're looking for input for this and it go here, and then people could.
Once we get a plan, we're required to publish the plan on our website for 30 days.
Okay.
And so will need to be doing that. And the board will see it and approve and have an
Do you
opportunity.
mean like once we've chosen? Is that the plan? Because I'm looking, if we're looking for input prior to making the plan.
We can do both,
Okay.
certainly.
Okay.
The only thing I can share at this point are the rules, if we just want input.
What's the timeline, Julianne, in terms of coming up with a plan and having us approve it?
We need to get moving on it.
Okay.
So I'd like to see it pretty well wrapped up between April and May. Would be ideal.
Any other questions? Comments?
I don't know where it's best to use the money, so I guess I'll wait to hear from you guys. Tell us what you think is the best use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're moving on to J3, which is the update and approval of our copier lease.
Yep, this is a follow-up from February 13th. The Board of Education requested some additional information and guidance. So I know that Mr. Wolf is here also. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Fuchs, and she can walk us through the memo and see what questions the board has at this time.
Thank you. So on February 13th, when I was discussing going to public bid for various things, I had mentioned that the copiers, it was time to replace them. At that time, I mentioned that we typically don't bid our copiers. It is legally allowable not to, and I've cited the school code that allows that. I mentioned that we have invested a lot of time and energy into making the software that we use with the Canon machines work in terms of Tim's tech department. They have completely integrated our swipe cards, which we use to get in the buildings with the copiers. We have worked very diligently to reduce the number of copies that people make. We've done that by moving the machines to centrally located areas. The number of copies that we've reduced over 5 years, a little over 1 million, down to 800,000 a month. So that's significant. So when the proposal came back from Canon, as you'll see on the last page, it is less, and we get one more machine with less money. What I'd like to do is to give you an opportunity to speak directly to Mr. Wolf, who oversees the Canon copiers, in terms of why we would want to make this significant change, possibly in the bidding process, and rather just accept the Canon lease for the 5 years. There's a lot of training and learning that would have to go on, and we are in the middle of switching our student information system, which we did not have a choice in because the company, Tyler Technologies, was bought out. And so now we're being forced to do Infinite Campus. And so it's just not a good time to do something like this. But yeah, let's have Tim come up to the mic, and then you can ask questions.
Well, my question is for you before he
Sure.
starts. Did I do my math right? On the back of this, it says monthly payment of 14,620 times a 5-year lease, so it's 877,000 is what this contract is. Thank you.
That's for 800,000 copies a month for 5 years.
Still closer to $1 million. It should be big.
So 10 years ago, we did bid it, and Canon won the bid. And then 5 years ago, when the lease was up, Canon actually lowered their prices, and then we brought it to the board, and then signed another 5-year lease. So we've been 10 years with Canon. Before we were with Canon, we were with Toshiba. It was a mess. Everything didn't function as well. Canon has proven The reliability, we're at 99% uptime with the copy machines. Just a crazy thing with the Canon copy machines. When the Canon machine does fail, we hear about it. People are upset. They need to make their copies. They need to print. Internet goes down. Nobody says anything. To me, internet's way more important. Internet doesn't get to go down often, but I hear about it if we have any repeat malfunctions on any of the Canon machines. And Julianne, I'm sure you can attest to that. We do quarterly meetings with Canon. We review all the different service calls. Toshiba did not offer that with us. And any machine that has had repeat failures, we go through and we find out why that machine, and we talk to their engineers and everything else. And it's just not, we just repaired it. We're looking to see why it failed and to make sure that we have a higher uptime in the future. And that's how they maintain that 99% uptime.
The response time is 4 hours typically at most. They have great service.
One of the technicians lives in our district. We have a really good working relationship with them. The secretaries in the buildings know how to make a service call to get them out right away. The workflow of just the office and the teachers, I would hate to change systems. It's just working so smoothly.
And then Steve's time.
And then one of my technicians, one of his main jobs is make sure see all the printing, whether it's individual printers, which we don't have many of. We've standardized on multifunction printers like this. That's color. So we don't do any high-end color other than in the graphic arts.
So if I would say I want this bid, who would you expect to be? So you mentioned Toshiba, I believe.
I said Toshiba, maybe Ricoh, Konica, Minolta.
So there are other companies.
There are other companies out there. One thing though with Canon, we do Canon Direct. So if you go through just a print or multifunction printer supplier, they may do multiple different brands. With Canon, their repairmen only repair Canon. So if you go with a supplier that does different ones, they may come out and they service Konica Minolta. They may service Ricoh. We get specialized repairmen that only do Canon because we do Canon Direct.
Okay, I guess I don't understand your world.
Okay.
So
No,
if
I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask.
if we were to say we only want put out a bid that said we only want Toshiba machines, wouldn't we get Toshiba repair?
So if we, so you're saying bid just Canon?
No,
We would probably not be able to get any lower because this is Canon Direct.
I don't know what Canon Direct is.
We're buying directly from the manufacturer.
Okay.
So it's like if you're buying a Chevy car, you're buying directly from Chevy, not from a dealer.
So then, I'm still confused.
I'm sorry.
No, so we would get, if we were to bid it and say Toshiba won,
Mm-hmm.
we would be buying their machines at a monthly cost of whatever that cost would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would have repairmen that would be on call to come repair.
Yes.
So what I guess I heard you say is you think we can't get any better price because Canon's cheaper because we buy direct from Canon?
If we were bidding just Canon machines.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying if you bid Ricoh or Konica Minolta, it may come in less. But from my stance is Canon's proven that they're a high quality machine with high quality repairmen that we can have the maximum uptime. And
I don't doubt that any of those statements are true.
okay.
$877,000
Mm-hmm.
should be bid.
So I have a question about, do you know, if we switched to a different manufacturer,
Mhm.
a printer, how many people would need to be trained on the new,
Everyone.
everyone? And how long does, I mean.
Depends
half
who
an
you
hour or
are.
so per person?
Secretary's going to be different than,
What's your cost difference?
Your point is valid, but if they bid and Canon is low, then we can compare that. And we still don't have to take the lower bid. If we're only going to save $10,000, then it doesn't make any sense to do this. What I'm asking for is the work you're required to put out the bid package, not necessarily I don't know where they will land. You might win. Canon might win and it might be all great, but we went through a similar conversation with the insurance broker for years. We didn't want to put the insurance package out to bid because we liked the broker. Well, we put it out to bid and it got $50,000 cheaper because we went through the effort of putting it out to bid. So You might be right. We might not save any money at all. It might not be worth it, but we don't have that information.
So to do that, we would need that extra information. Is that something even feasible where you guys could pull data where how much your staff it would cost in hours, how much it would cost staff hours of training, what that looked like? So if we did bid it and we said, oh, it's going to cost 20,000 in staff hours, I don't know. We would be able to compare that. Is that even something feasible that you guys could do?
So I believe, I'd have to look, but I believe if we take it out to bid, we're required to take the most lowest responsible bidder, because this isn't considered a professional service, because we're bidding the lease of the machines.
And the
So-
okay,
Service is a part of it, but it's not considered specialized like your health insurance broker. Or it might be, I'll need to check.
okay, all right.
I don't know if it's an RFP or if it's an actual bid, because it's in the exceptions. The law allows the board not to do it because they know, they understand what Tim is talking about
Right.
with regard to a big shift. And so,
And I don't doubt any of that is true,
mhm.
but I guess now if we do an RFP, do we have to take the lowest responsible or
Now,
are
if you
we,
do the RFP, you can interview
okay?
like we do for the auditors and the health insurance, but I don't know if the RFP is an allowable tool. I need to find that out.
Thank you.
But if it's a bid, then you have to take the
So-
lowest.
So
we-
we'll need 4 people who want to get that extra information. We want to see if we want to go ahead without the bid first. Okay, I know you know that. I'm just
Yeah.
putting that out. I think there are costs that aren't money costs, and one of those things would be asking teachers and staff to take on yet another new thing and learn. There are a lot of demands on their time. And in order to do that, we would probably use up some of our professional development time that could be better used for something else that is more student focused. So I think if it's working well and if, you know, they lowered the cost and we're getting more services for the new cost, I would not need to see a bid, but
To go along with President Witt, one of the bigger challenges, as Dr. Fuchs talked about, our change to Infinite Campus. For next year, a different student management system. The other challenge would be is while people are training on the new technology, the new systems, the biggest challenge would be is the fact that our IT people would be the ones training them at the same time that a school year is starting, when our staff is going to be learning a new student management system, and the time spent for our IT staff on the first week, first 10 days, 12 days of school, the most time that they can spend with our staff learning Infinite Campus will be essential. And again, I can't quantify if it's 10 days per person, 2 days per person. I can't quantify that piece, but that transition is always stressful to a new student data management system across the district. And it is brand new with other things that our staff is also working on to start a school year.
And I understand that concern. Could we do a 1-year lease and then put it out to bid when they don't have as much new information to digest at the beginning of the school year?
We would have to extend the existing lease, right? We wouldn't
will,
do
and the
a,
machines are-
yeah, and then one thing, so they're 5 years old, and as you go through, you'll see the repair requests and things like that are very low the first year. Second year goes up just slightly. Now we're in the 5th year. They're still functioning machines, but the amount of repairs we have versus the first year are way up. It's just like your car. When you get over 150,000 miles, you're gonna have a lot more repairs than, you know, the first 10,000 miles.
The other thing that I want to point out, Canon does have a partnership with Omnia Partners, which is a cooperative purchasing program. So the pricing that we're getting has been bid to the co-op. There are other manufacturers in that co-op as well with their pricing. And so the pricing that we're getting is good pricing. It's a matter of if we want to go to a lesser quality, because you could do that and you're going to get lower pricing. So, you know, I guess we really feel strongly about Canon because it served us well.
Is there any way to quantify that lower pricing? I feel like I'm like, I mean, are we looking at $200,000 less, $500,000 less? I know that's extreme, but I mean, it's tough
We
to
would
make a
need to
decision
go through
without.
the bid process to learn that information.
Sorry, I thought I heard you say
Or
that.
RFP.
No, what,
Yeah, bid or RFP.
no, what, sorry, let me start over. You said that there's a consortium that they already bid. So we can't get the pricing from other companies through that and just look at it?
I can find out.
Because that's like, we're in a consortium to buy toilet paper, right?
Right.
And there's a flat rate, so is that information available as to we can,
I need to make sure I compare apples to apples
please?
because we need to make sure that the Uniflow is also included.
That's the management piece of it.
So we need to hear from other board
Yeah,
members,
I'll
whether or not you want that additional information or whether you want to just go ahead with the recommendation of the district.
Julianne, what's the, like a broken record, what's the timeline on this? In terms of like,
As soon as possible.
okay,
Our lease ends in June. So,
Okay.
They'll be picking these up July 1st.
got it.
yeah, they'll get delivered and switched out. So we need to,
So if we
Yeah.
don't go with Canon, these will be gone July 1st, so we'll have to have something in place.
Right. So if we say we want to wait 2 more weeks to hear back on it, whether it's a bid or an RFP, what does that do to the timeline?
we can get it done.
We'll, Jillian, we need to make sure though, if we go to an RFP or bid, that they can supply it by July 1st.
I know, supply
That's
chain.
because of supply chain issues, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm leaning that way. I'm just trying to get all the information.
But you have a very valid point. If we can't get copiers, we're stuck.
And they won't like me if they can't print and copy.
Likewise.
So what is your comfort zone when it comes to, like Ryan made the comment, can we extend this for a year or two and then do this bidding process after this next year, you know, with the training of the teachers and stuff like that? We're very sensitive to that, obviously, so we don't want to add one more
Thank you.
thing to that, you know. But what does that look like for, you know, your perspective?
We do have a couple machines that are getting at, I don't want to say high failure, but higher than they've been. Those are the machines that are getting hit the most. We would have to look at maybe moving some around that were not being used as much in that higher place. I'd have to do a little bit of research on that. I'm sure it's possible. I just don't know what the failure rate would be. I'd like to talk to Canon about that too. We've never gone into the 6-year, so let's say we've never gone over the 250,000 mile, or if you will.
So we'll have to look into that.
I don't think we got 4 yet. So I mean, I've
I
made
don't
my,
at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just take a vote.
Okay. So, here's my recommendation. I got it. It's right there. Okay. So I move that the Board of Education directs the administration to renew the 5-year lease with Canon for the district's copiers with costs listed in our packet above. Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Nay.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Nay.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
no.
Mr. Mankivsky.
No.
All right. So, and Dr. Lawler isn't here yet. The motion fails, and we need more information.
Okay.
We will work on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
we are now on J4, which is the approval of the minimum staffing plan for 2023-24 school year.
Yep, 1 second, I'll turn it over to Dr. Atkins. As you know, the minimum staffing plan is presented to the Board of Education annually in March, and Dr. Atkins will go through the staffing plan and highlight several of the reasons why it's in March and stipulations and law, why we do it at that time frame, and then see what questions the board has as we move towards taking action with the staffing plan for the next school year.
Thank you, Dr. Layden. Good evening, board. So before we begin, I just want to share a couple of notes of thanks. First to our ad team. Conversations about the staffing plan begin probably back in October, November, just in terms of looking ahead, forecasting sections, needs, programming, all of those kinds of things. And it takes a significant amount of work during those winter months to develop our minimum staffing plan. Like Dr. Layden mentioned, it is just that. It's a minimum staffing plan. I believe the board knows and has seen in practice over the last many years that should the needs arise in the spring or the summer, we'll bring those needs back to the board for conversation and a vote and approval by the board. Beginning with spring break, we do start to monitor enrollments on a weekly basis. We have a running enrollment document that our building secretaries update every Thursday. That gives us time to meet with administrators and talk about those enrollments Thursday and Friday, bringing anything to the board that should come up. Please know too, we've had some conversations here at the board about the challenges involved in hiring some of our specialized staff. Looking ahead, the administration has moved forward with tentatively hiring high needs areas, psychologists, social workers, speech pathologists, special ed teachers specifically. And to that end, we're in a very healthy place today for staffing next year. I'm very proud to share at the high school specifically, minus the dean, which Dr. Horn's working on, we're fully staffed for next year. To include the psychologist position that's been open all year and the speech language pathologist position that's been open all year.
Say that again?
We're fully staffed with all those specialized staff members. So a special thank you to Fran Eggleston for helping network and find some of these very hard to fill positions in the area. So we're very excited about that. There are lots of moving pieces, and we do bring them to you early this time of year, as Dr. Layden mentioned. We do want to note each year that this harkens all the way back to 1985 in the Education Reform Act that required districts to but release teachers a certain amount of time before the last day of school. The design behind that was to give teachers at that time the opportunity to go and find other employment in other districts so that they weren't scrambling last minute over the summer to try to find positions. A lot has changed since then. We're talking about a day and time when teachers had to go to a district office, look at a bulletin board, hand type out applications, mail them in, all those kinds of things. And that all happens digitally now. So today, many decades later, we look at that process and go, why are we doing this now? It's just a holdover that has not changed. And again, that's what makes it then become a minimum staffing plan. So these are the things that we bare bones know we need now. We do monitor our hotspots, and if we end up with additional staffing needs, we bring those forward. Remember also, as we talk about this, there's a difference between bodies and FTE. You might have one FTE that's comprised of 2 or 3 staff members all working part-time. So there's some back and forth and interplay between those things as we go along. A couple things that we look at as we do our minimum staffing. We do have recommended class sizes with in our agreement with the local collective bargaining unit. And at K2, it's 22 to 1, 3-5 is 24 to 1. Every day, extended day kindergarten is 24, and middle school and high school are 26. Those are recommendations. Those are not caps. So that's an important piece to know, but those are the targets that we shoot for. The minimum staffing plan and all the various recommendations come from this. There are some support staff pieces that we'll talk about tonight, but support staff comes in April. Our grade span FTE, big picture, and I'll explain this in a lot more detail coming up, will increase by about 2.5 FTE this year, because we've talked a little bit about the Personalized Learning Academy throughout the year and offset, and that number includes that offset, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. We do, again, make sure that we monitor all of our enrollments. When we look at things like special education, we also make sure
that we are complying with the law. An IEP is a document between the school district and parents, but it is a legally binding document. So if it comes with staffing requirements, we have to meet those things. We do look at enrollment as a snapshot for this presentation at the end of January. So these are January 31 enrollment figures to determine these things. So you may hear and may have already heard from people about, well, we're up a little bit here, down a little bit there. That's to be expected. But we do have to take a snapshot at one point to then make firm plans from. One of the things that I'd also point out as we go along in terms of that increase of 2.5 FTE, please know that we had tentatively budgeted 16 FTE for the Personalized Learning Academy, and we're only increasing 2.5 FTE. So there's a projected increase of 16 FTE that was in the tentative budget, but of that 16 FTE and offset, we're only actually utilizing 2.5 FTE, and that will make more sense when I show some of the staffing allotments for the Personalized Learning Academy. So here we can share with you what the total FTE has been over the last couple of years, where that increase comes from. Know that enrollments for Fox Valley Career Center, kindergarten, and early childhood are still tentative. Fox Valley has some special arrangements and scheduling needs that they do with all of the districts that they work with. And then kindergarten, we did have our enrollment Saturday, a roundup a couple weeks ago, and we have our projections from that. And then we also have early childhood. If you recall, early childhood is available for 3-year-old to kindergarten age students. Some of those students are special education students. Some of those are community-based students that enroll. We share with you the increases of our special education populations as they matriculate through the 3 grade span, so you can kind of see how that continues to move. And then we give you some comprehensive data about how much or of an increase or a decrease we have at each grade span. Let's see. So as we look at these sections, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to middle school and high school, we do have the need this year to reduce 0.7 FTE, which is 2 people. One person is our music teacher, Mrs. Deanna Cates. She teaches 0.2 of music, so think 1 day a week or 1 period all year long at the high school level. She has been a part-time teacher for us forever, and if we do have that additional music or keyboarding need, she's our go-to person. So it's unfortunate. She does a fabulous job for us, but we didn't have the registration for that this year. The other 0.5 is actually a full-time reduction from the middle school, but we have a 0.5 need at the elementary school, and we have a first-year teacher who is certified and entitled under the sequence of honorable dismissal to that position. So they would be going from full-time to part-time, 0.5 at the elementary, and then they would have recall rights to a full-time position. So should someone leave the district, move on, move out of state, whatever, and holds a position she's certified for, she would have dibs, if you will, through recall to that full-time position. Yes?
That seems pretty likely based on the ins and outs of staffing.
Yes. Yes. Typically, I don't know of any right now where we are expecting, nobody's had that conversation with us, oh, my spouse is moving or those kinds of things. But yes, that does typically happen to at least a degree every year.
Doctor, this is the staffing as you set forth here does not anticipate any class size waivers for your special ed classes.
No.
So we're going to be fully compliant with.
Correct. Very healthily so.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So here you see our enrollment projections for elementary, middle, and high school, and then also our outplay students. And you can see that for this coming year, we're essentially up 6 kids. So relatively flat enrollment overall. And those changes we see at the middle school, high school level. We did have that high population bubble, and they are matriculating through the system as we look at our enrollments. I'm sorry?
They're in the high school now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The next one that I'd want to show you is our Personalized Learning Academy enrollment. These are those projected students. And what I did for this is showed you what grade spans they're coming from. And again, one of the things that we've talked about, and I neglected to mention at the outset of the presentation, remember that enrollment doesn't occur in pockets. So when we see a net reduction of 30 kids at a certain grade, that doesn't mean a teacher, because it might be 2 kids at this building, 5 kids at that building, 10 kids at the next building, et cetera. And so it doesn't occur in clean distributions. It's spread out and it's random. Let's see here. Oops. Elementary class sizes, I want to talk about this. We share this with the board every year. These are the average class sizes at each of our elementaries. I want to make sure that I point out here, there's a lot of misconceptions about this because of the state school report card. The state school report card will list a class size ratio, typically very low, and they do that because they take the total number of kids, the total number of staff, and divide. What I share with you is what the actual class sizes are in our buildings, because what we don't do is include the social workers and the psychologists and the counselors that don't have class loads. They have students, caseloads, if you will, that they work with, but they don't actually have a class. So we take those people out. This would be 4 teachers at a grade level with 80 kids, 20-to-1 kind of a number. Okay, so there's nothing hidden here. There's no softening of the class sizes. These are what our class sizes averages would be across each of our buildings. Here we get into our elementary classes. If you'll note, our enrollment for kindergarten, we do our roundup. I know, sorry. Our roundup was done last Saturday at each building. Dr. Fuchs has a very historically accurate metric she uses to predict how many additional walk-ins we'll have throughout the spring and summer. And we use that as a multiplier to the actual hard count we have from the roundup to give us our estimated enrollment. And so we're fortunate, but again, with kindergarten, it's not always a straight divisor because we have half day, that's required, and we have extended day, that is an option. But this year we will need 2 additional kindergarten teachers. So I'm very excited about that. We have a very healthy kindergarten class coming in. As we go through our grade spans, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we see some reductions that are needed to align our staff to our students. And then as we go down, you'll see a decrease in the need for a cross-categorical staff, special ed teachers. And then you'll see an increase of a social work component at one of our elementary schools. And we'll talk a little bit later how that 0.5 is actually going to be a full-time person, because we're combining it with a 0.5 need at the Personalized Learning Academy. Okay, so net for the elementary, when we add in the 2 kindergarten, take out the remainder, we're down 3.5 FTE at the elementary school. Questions there? No? Okay. Personalized Learning Academy. I know we talked a lot about the Personalized Learning Academy coming in, and didn't have much detail earlier in the year for you, but we do now. I'm pleased to say that I'm very excited about this Personalized Learning Academy and what it's going to be able to do for some of our students. I'm also pleased to say that, like we talked about before, we had budgeted 16 FTE for this. We're going to need 9.7 FTE at the Personalized Learning Academy, but it's only going to incur an increase of 2.5 FTE overall for the district because of the offset. So we already saw some of the offset at the elementary level. You'll see yet more at the middle school and more at the high school. Add all that together, take it off of the 9.7, that gives us the 2.5. And we'll talk about, I have a chart that'll show that more clearly in a few slides here, okay? At the Personalized Learning Academy, we will have a 4th grade teacher, a 5th grade teacher, 2 middle school ELA teachers, and 1 middle school math teacher. So I want to point out at the presentation I believe we gave a couple months ago, or a little while ago, about the Personalized Learning Academy and our registration being right around 105, 106 kids. That's not 9.7 FTE into those 107 for, you know, a very low class size. That's those 5 teachers into the 105. We're at like 21.1 to 1 for a class size, which is in line with our elementary levels.
Would you just reemphasize that, because that's some of the feedback that I've heard?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be happy to. So if you look, the pathways teacher, that would be our specials. That's going to be those music, art, PE, plus some other interdisciplinary components. Our special ed teachers, that's going to be actually 1.5 special ed and 0.5 MTSS for the 2.0. We have band and chorus, 0.2. So those kids that are there that need band and chorus will be able to get that during the day. And then we have a 0.5 social worker. The social worker, the pathways, the special education, and the band chorus teachers are not part of the class size ratios. Just the classroom teachers are the class size, what we use.
And that's district-wide, not just at the academy?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's the same metric across the board.
Thank you.
Yep.
Chris, I hope this isn't too off topic, but I know they added third grade to the personalized academy. So is there no third grade teacher?
Current third graders can register for next year for fourth grade. And I
They added a
believe,
third grade section.
we had a wait list. There was something there with, I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
But I know that we're trying to expand it to make sure that we have enough fourth graders coming in.
Okay.
The middle school, this is our projection for the middle school. When we look again, Mr. Carey, to your point, the class size ratio are those first 3 rows. Those are the actual classroom teachers. Not that our exploratory teachers and such aren't also, they are. But when you look at class size ratios, those are the team teachers that teach the reading, writing, math that we use to report those class sizes. We're down 1 section in 6th grade, 2 at the middle school, and 1 at the 8th grade. And Mr. Faulkner is going to have some configurations to do with the teams. Clearly, it won't be 6-person teams, 2 6-person teams at each grade level. It'll be potentially a 6-person and a 5-person, that kind of thing. And again, we talked a little bit last year during the minimum staffing plan. The number of people on the teams has nothing to do with curriculum. We're not changing anything. Nothing's different. We're just comprising the teams differently. When we go down, special education is up 2.0 FTE. One of those FTE is the drop you saw at elementary. Those kids are going to middle school. And then also with additional IEP changes and IEP needs, there's a need for another IEP teacher, special ed teacher at the middle school. And that gives us, with 4 teachers coming out and 2 special ed teachers being added, a difference of -2 at the middle school.
What are you looking at for caseload?
Caseload,
Caseload of special ed teachers at the middle school.
right. So you had mentioned before about waivers. We're not going to be in the position to need any waivers. The state has a recommendation of 15-1. We staff at 12-1, and right now we're between 9.5 and 10-1. So we typically overstaff special ed because we have new kids that get IEPs throughout the year, move-in students, and rather than add teachers and redo schedules and everything else, we build in for that at the start of the year.
So caseload is how many students?
About 10-1
10
across the board.
10 students per.
Correct. Now, that doesn't take into account intensity of need, whether one student's just a check in, check out kind of situation, or whether it's pull out for intensive minutes each week, those kinds of things. High school is always tenths. There's always parts. Remember, a 0.2 is basically 1 period a day for the whole year. 0.1 would be 1 period for like a semester. So you can kind of think about it that way. We have some ups and downs, some ins and outs. You see the driver's ed in there that we had talked about a little bit earlier. We have some increased needs in some of our different departments. And then that results in us needing 1.7 teachers, FTE less. Not teachers, that was a mistake. 1.7 FTE less. And that 1.7 is comprised of tenths here and there. Okay. This kind of summarizes it a little bit more cleanly, a little bit more legibly from afar. Sorry about that. Elementary's down 3.5, middle school's down 2, high school's down 1.7, personalized learning academies up 9.7. Add all that together, we get the 2.5 increase that we talked about. So we're able to open the personalized learning academy with only 2.5 additional FTE to our allotment, as opposed to the 16 that we were planning for. Questions there? Okay. Overall, we're aligning all of those enrollments to our various staffing allotments at the elementary and middle school. At the high school, we not only have the enrollment, but we also have the registration and programmatic needs, and when do we open another section of math or of English, those kinds of things. So it's a lot more complicated. And a special thank you to Dr. Horn and his staff The student services team is working massive hours to hand schedule this year and getting a lot done very well. So we appreciate that. We've had to go through and procure that staffing for the Personalized Learning Academy. A majority of those staff are existing staff, that offset that we talked about. We talked about that it's a 2.5 FTE, certified FTE increase out of the projected 16 FTE. Classroom supports, and these are some of the things I know there were some questions about behavior facilitators and such. We can talk a little bit about that. We still have our MTSS staff. I mean, you recall from last year, we had some changes to our MTSS programming. We've made those changes. That's been pretty successful. We have some interesting data available to us, and I have some higher level pieces I can share with you about that if you'd like. Behavior facilitators are still in the plan. They are needed, and we've had some various successes with those. And remember, those behavior facilitators are not only potentially working with students, but they're also working with staff to work on tier 1 instruction. What do I do in my classroom that I can maybe change or do differently or be supported differently so as to minimize or prevent some behaviors or off-task behaviors? We do have our pockets. We do have individual students. We do have places where maybe a cohort of kids are presenting more challenges than another, but we also have data that shows some overall improvements as well, in large part due to the work that our behavior facilitators are doing with students. So that's a good thing. We also have all of our historical supports that we've had for many, many years. We have our instructional coaches that are there doing job embedded professional development with the teachers. We have our co-teaching structures that allow us to have additional supports in the classroom to support all of our various learners. We have our ELL supports. We also have counselors. If you recall, during COVID, we added 2 counselors to the high school to help offset some of the challenges we had with students coming back from therapeutic placements for various mental health issues. We still have that in our allotment at the high school. They are still needed. We are still working with those students that present as high need students in our high school. So we've got a lot of neat supports going on. We're working both in terms of the professional development side to work on our efficacy and instructional programming, but then also to meet needs where they're at. So when we have challenges with students, we're able to bring in the experts that are needed to help support those teachers and those students in a timely fashion. Yes?
Co-teaching.
Mhm.
We had a plan to increase that incrementally. Are we done?
I don't remember an increase
Are we going
incrementally.
to?
They remember it.
Yeah, we were going to, we started with a pilot, and then we were gonna.
Oh,
and then
yeah,
we
we-
increased, but then we were gonna get to a point where we had all co-teachers.
We have co-teachers at all levels, at all buildings currently. Now, what is
In all class, like all.
no, not necessarily all classes, because again, just like enrollment doesn't occur in clean pockets, neither does need. So if all things were equal, we have the special ed staff at every site to have 1 co-teacher for every 2 grade levels, to be able to go in and identify that I'm going to work with this teacher here for this ELA block and that teacher for that math block, etc. However, it doesn't always come out that cleanly, because I may have those 9, 10 kids that I'm responsible for, but then this student develops the need for me to work with them in a pull-out structure. So now I may not be available to push in as frequently or as often as I had been prior. On paper, everything should be equitable, but then of course life happens and education happens, and those teachers need to flex the allotment of their time. And they do that pretty regularly, so they will flex in and out when they need to meet kids' needs.
So what you're doing is working, you have all the co-teachers you need, we don't need to add, we aren't adding more because we already have what we need.
At this time, we're not recommending more. Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Good question. Yes.
Under what category would the social emotional learning specialists fall?
Social emotional learning specialist, where are you looking?
Well, no.
The behavior
Would
facilitator?
that be the behavior facilitators?
Yeah, that'd be the behavior facilitators.
They're not your traditional behavior management specialists.
No, they are staff who have done some individual things
Right.
to learn more about those SEL components, and we do have one of the few board certified behavior specialists in the area on our staff.
Available to all schools.
all schools. So what we do at the elementary, what we did, if you recall, we have 4. We have 1 at the high school, 1 at the middle school, and then 2 that are split between the 4 elementaries. At the middle school and high school, it's a little bit cleaner. They're at those sites, they work at those sites. At the elementary level, theoretically, again, just like the special ed teachers, they would split their time between the 2 buildings. But what more often happens is there's a need with this cohort or even this student right now here at this place. So I will go there and maybe stay there. Instead of splitting my week half and half, maybe I'm there for a full week and then the next week I go back to the other building. So hopefully over the period of the year, it's 50-50. But recognizing that I might need to go to building A for a couple of weeks to help get a situation going where we can work with a child in a different fashion. It's very amoeba-like. So,
Only where the need is.
correct. Correct.
I have information on the academy. That 2.0 is 3rd through 5th.
Okay.
So
Yep.
numbers are right, just
3rd through
third is
5th grade.
the 3rd is included.
Correct. Okay.
Excellent.
So 3rd grades are in there.
Yep.
Thank you. Some additional programmatic information. Now, this is not a certified component. We'll show you how this breaks out in just a minute. These would be non-certified staff. One is an ongoing conversation that we've had with the board about a communications director. The district does feel that we need to add that communications director to our allotment. And it's the same thing that we saw last year and looked at last year. We'd be projecting a salary between $70,000 to $90,000, depending on education level and experience. We do have a job description that would require a formalized background in communications, all of those different things. And then if the board wanted that as part of this minimum staffing plan, we're prepared to post, search, interview, those kinds of things. And we'd follow a similar format with stakeholder involvement in that process. The other non-certified staff that I'd want to, again, non-certified in all of our speak members and such comes in April, but it's tied to the Personalized Learning Academy, so I wanted to make sure we included it here. We will need a head cook, a building nurse, and a principal secretary at the Personalized Learning Academy. It is a school. They do have those school functions, and now that we have a dedicated separate site at Meredith, at the Kaneland Meredith Academic Center at KMAC, we're going to need to have a building nurse there. So we'll be in the process of doing that. Here you can see that projected FTE by type. So you have your certified FTE up here. We have the support staff, and I have just a note there that the 142 from 138, that is the communications director, and then the non-certified people for the Personalized Learning Academy. Okay, so that's where those come from. That's those 4 FTE. The administration, there's no changes there for an increase total bodies now of those 6.5 people, 6.5 FTE. But remember, 4 of those FTE are support staff, non-certified staff. Okay, so the 2.5 certified, the 4 non-certified, communication director, and the 3 people for the Personalized Learning Academy. Switching gears real quick, differentials and stipends. If you recall, we shared with the board in the fall how differentials and stipends kind of come to be. This year we had a variety of requests. I put all of those requests up here so that you can see what's being asked for, what's out there. We have marching band requests, bowling, wrestling, department chair requests, esports. That's a burgeoning area. And after reviewing everything, these would be the things that we're recommending for approval this year. An assistant girls track and field coach, a JV or assistant boys soccer coach. The Future Farmers Association currently has a sponsor and a co-sponsor, but what we're finding out is with the volume of work that's done, it truly is a co-sponsor and not an assistant. And so we're recommending an increase to make them both the same. They both put in the same amount of hours of work, etc. A girls wrestling head coach, and then an assistant middle school wrestling coach. And then to go along with our revised MTSS programming. We've learned this last year that we need an MTSS team leader at the middle school and an MTS department chair at the high school. So these would be the recommendations that we're bringing forward for the board after reviewing participation rates, interest rates, title issues, all those various requests, all those various things. What we did here to get you a number on this, please know we have a collective bargaining agreement with the KEA that dictates the rate for all of these things. These amounts would be the year one rates for all of the additional programming, and then also that one FFA position is an existing position, it would just be an increase to a different rate. So that's why it's a much lower dollar amount. All told, 27,408 for those things.
Dr. Atkins, can you remind me, I'm forgetting the process. We've gone through different iterations, right? So when we have additional, these extracurricular roles and then dollars, how do we work with KEA on that process? Can you
Yeah.
remind me?
So what we do currently is the administration still solicits input from all the stakeholders. There's a time frame. I work with Mrs. Schumacher to make sure that we announce to the membership, hey, in December, you need to get these requests in. Here's the process, the forms. They're due in January. In January, the administration meets, reviews all of the data that we have, selects those things that we want to recommend to the board. Then we bring those recommendations first back to the KEA to set the rate on them. So what they are entitled to do under the Illinois Employee Labor Relations Board is to be able to say, hey, this kind of work equals this amount of dollars in line with the existing contract. So they're not making new rates. They're finding where it fits with all the other things that we have. They then I don't know what the right word is, approve those recommended rates, which I then bring to you as a recommendation in its whole for our differentials and stipends.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know the question is coming. Tell me about lacrosse, why it's not on there.
Two reasons. One, the standard process of recommending that we add it by the people involved. Nobody recommended to do it. We do have it as a special arrangement.
I didn't quite understand what you just
Yep,
said.
I'll explain. We do have a special arrangement with the lacrosse team where they can play under Kaneland's banner, if you will. But there's additional fees involved in that. And the coach is a volunteer coach. The current coach, who was the coach last year, is the coach this year, didn't put it forward as a recommendation. That's not on him. That didn't materialize. And then additionally, the administration did not recommend it. In large part, the administration didn't recommend it because it's not just the cost of a coach. There's also startup costs and continuing costs with lacrosse to the tune of about $55,000 to start it, and then ancillary costs every single year to recondition equipment. So what you'll see with track, there's already a track team. They already transport. They already do all of those things. This is truly just an additional coach. Same thing with soccer. We have the nets, we have the balls, we have the uniforms, we have the kids. This is truly just the cost of the additional coach. To add a completely new sport has those additional startup costs that are too prohibitive at this time. And we do have the outlet for those children now through the current arrangement that we have with them. They do have a team, they do play, they are a Kaneland sport, but it's on a volunteer basis with additional fees.
Are we able to do something where we would just pay the coach, but not the whole team fee and build up over the years? Like next year, we'll buy this many pieces of equipment. Is that a possibility?
I would probably say initially that maybe all things are possible, yet once we take it on officially, we are not liable or responsible for all of those things regardless. So for example, right now, those costs are offset in large part by the increased fees by the students. But if we made it a sport, we can't have different fees than every other athletic. So we lose that. Additionally, then we can't just say, oh, we'll build up and maybe we'll play without helmets this year, but we'll get you the shoulder pads. We've got to outfit them in accordance with all the requirements. And so I don't know that we would be able to do that per se, but.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a participation rate roughly on lacrosse?
I do. Let me look here. I want to say it's 30 something kids.
And I think that number is about accurate, and I think it's been stable at that number with a varsity and a JV team for the last 3 or 4 years.
31.
Thank you.
31 kids as of today.
Can you explain how these groups were recommended versus other ones? Is it
Yeah,
due to
course.
number of people? or students?
So let's start at the top. Girls track and field, we have 85 boys and 72 girls. Boys had one more coach. So we need to have the equivalent number of coaches for the girls team. System boys soccer was at 21-1 for both the boys and the girls, yet the girls had one more coach. We need to make that equitable. Girls wrestling, we have 10 girls wrestling on a regular basis committed to the program. IHSA recommends, believe it or not, 1.9 wrestlers per coach. We're not that low, but we do need a coach to have that. And additionally, with wrestling, one of the biggest challenges we encounter practically is that IHSA requires a coach at the mat with the wrestler. So when you have 2 kids wrestling at the same time, one of them is waiting for the other match to finish for the coach to then run over to that other mat and be there ringside, I guess, during that match. Let's see, what else? Yeah, go ahead.
You said for girls track, you said the coaching numbers were off. So is that a Title IX requirement that we have to?
Correct.
I assume so, but.
Wrestling at the middle school, we currently have 42 kids with one coach. We need a second coach again to drop that ratio and then to be able to have those meets run a little bit more smoothly, because one coach running around right now, we almost need to buy him track shoes to get the meets done. The FFA piece we talked about, and then the MTSS piece, that is something that, like I said, as we've gone throughout the year, we've realized that there's an articulation of information that's just needed with an MTSS team leader and an MTSS department chair.
So the ones that were not chosen, like golf for marching bands and esports and stuff like that, their numbers are just lower or just not meeting certain requirements? Thank
We'd
you.
like to do all of it all the time.
Right.
We have to do that within our means.
And in addition to lacrosse, there are other sports that have a similar setup, correct? Like swimming and gymnastics. and
Correct.
things like
Correct.
that.
And so one of the things that we do to support those other programs is those kids will practice however they practice, maybe on their own, maybe with a travel team or a club team. But then when they compete as a Kaneland student, we'll pay a supervisor who's not a coach. They're just there to say that, here's my Kaneland staff member. I'm here for Kaneland today, so that they can go and compete at various meets or whatever. So we do have students that do that for swimming, gymnastics. I know over the years there's been talk about all sorts of different programs where we pay supervisors to do that. And Mr. Rollman does a good job of sending supervisors to those events.
Thank you.
Yep. Here's just a quick monetary summary. So we start to tie in now the dollars attached to all of these things. Again, we have our elementary reduction. We have our middle school reduction. We have our personalized learning academy increase. Okay, so the 9.5 plus those 3 non-certified people. We have our high school reduction. We have our communications director as an increase. We have our stipends and differentials as an increase. And then what I did was I gave you approximately the total body increase, 6.5 people, with then the approximate budgetary increase. And the reason it's a range there is because of that communication director's salary. We don't know exactly where that person's going to land. So we gave you a bit of a floor and a ceiling there. Questions?
Well, while we're on money, since roughly 80% of our costs are salary, is staff and benefits, what does this do to our budget?
So balcony view, what this does is it decreases the projected deficit. So again, our projected deficit included the 16 additional FTE for the personalized learning center. So we're not spending those.
Projected deficit of roughly 200?
16 times the 60,000 was like $960,000. So we're at 337 to 357 instead of 960. Just for the staffing side, there's additional components that Dr. Fuchs could speak
Right,
to.
no, I was,
projected
I
deficit.
guess, thank you for that. No, I was asking overall. Our overall projected budget for next school year
The
is,
projected deficit, in December when we did it, was about negative 3.4 million.
okay,
This brings it down to somewhere between 2.5 and 2.7.
so about 6-7%, which is pretty typical for what we've been doing since I remember, so, okay, thank you.
So we're getting there.
Yeah, I mean,
We're
that,
closing that gap.
but it's not uncommon for us to start a school year or a budget year with $1 million to $2 million projected deficit and end up at zero or give or take 100,000 either way. So-
Correct, because the board's directive is that you do not want currently to add to the fund balance. And the only way to do that is to budget as closely as you can. And otherwise, if you budget projected revenues over expenditures, you'll really add to the fund balance.
And keep in mind too, with that reduction of what we were anticipating, we're also opening an entire academy within that, well within that allotment. So we're very excited about that.
And adding an administrator position.
A non-certified administrative position, correct, with the communications director.
Good, oh, sorry.
Nope,
I was-
go ahead.
I was gonna move on, but
Nope. We have additional staffing considerations. If you recall, about 3 years ago, we started sharing with the board all the things that we're not recommending, but are nonetheless out there. Because there are things that are still out there that we wanted to make sure we talked about. Additional co-teachers for special education at the elementary level. We did talk about that. We're comfortable where we're at now, but we'd always love to have more. Additional social workers at all levels. Again, there are those social emotional components. We're in a good place right now. We're meeting all the requirements right now, but that could be a consideration for us to think about moving down the road. A full-time assistant principal for early childhood. Early childhood is a separate program at Blackberry Creek that devotes a lot of time. There's meetings every Friday for IEP updates and that kind of thing. It takes a lot of time from our 1.5 FTE currently at Blackberry, so that might be a need there. Additional 504 counselors at the middle school and the high school. An additional dean of students at the high school. A full-time auditorium manager. Middle school dean secretary. Full-time building substitutes at all levels. Full-time maintenance staff. Additional coach, one-to-one coach. For technology, additional MTSS staff, additional co-teaching paraprofessionals, full-time assistant principals at the elementaries, additional MTSS staff at the elementary level, additional CTE teachers at the middle school. We're sensing and feeling a need to begin to include more specific CTE programming at the middle school, so that's on our radar. Full-time LRC assistant for the high school, increase our Fox Valley security staff member from part-time to full-time. Additional psychologist at the high school, increased days for our special ed coordinator, a full-time maintenance secretary, increased days to the existing contracts of our dean and assistant principals at the high school, and then full-time principal dedicated to the personalized learning academy. So there are still a whole plethora of needs out there that we don't want the board to lose sight of, that we're not losing sight of, and that we are working our staffing plans around to the needs are there. We're accommodating some of those needs, but we don't have the capacity to do it all right now. Same thing with differentials and stipends. These are some of the things that didn't come forward as a recommendation to the board, but they're nonetheless out there. And we talked about a couple of these already in terms of what was requested, but then also we have on there the gymnastics, the swimming, the lacrosse, et cetera. So these are things that are still on our radar to continue to look at and monitor in the coming years.
Okay.
So that's all I had for the board now. Are there any other questions?
We have, there's a BNAT, I can't remember what the abbreviation stands for, at Fox Valley Basic Nurses. Is that taught by a certified nurse?
I believe that is a certified nurse, yes.
Or just pay an overload to have a building nurse?
No, because the building nurse is there for the in and out traffic that comes in all day long, monitors anyone with diabetes, provides medications, midday meds and all that. That teacher is teaching.
Okay.
They would not have the capacity to stop and do some Band-Aids or an ice pack or call a parent or any of those kinds of things while they're teaching a class.
Fair enough.
That would be too much of a drain on the instructional time. Absolutely.
So
Good question, though.
refresh my memory. Last budget cycle or minimum staffing plan, we approved a communications director. The board did. And then I don't recall quite why it went away, and then convince me why we should add it back.
I think that the board looked at it. I don't know that it went through on the minimum staffing plan because I think the board was looking for
No,
forward.
It
It
went
did, okay.
through, but the auditorium needs, the cost, the increased.
It came
cost of the
back later,
auditorium.
excuse me. And it wasn't a student-facing component at that time, and we just deferred. But again, recognizing that the board has an interest and the district has an interest, it's part of our plan today. Part of our recommendation, I should say.
Yeah, that was, Chris hit it on the head. That
I'm not
was-
arguing, it
yeah.
just changed. It came, we approved it, it went away, it came back. I just,
Yep, I think there was a more immediate need last spring.
Yes.
When we say communications director, we mean everything from a plan to get information in the hands of parents about things coming up, but also like a crisis manager that can communicate these kind of things.
Yes.
To a degree, I think, and there's going to have to be some conversation about how those daily operations will plan out. I know a lot of that is currently done by existing staff. And so who does what when and how do we gradually release that from one person to another? That has to be part of the transition planning.
Okay. Anything else, board members?
this is the minimum plan, meaning that you will be coming back to us with a special ed need or a.
Maybe.
Correct. Additional
Sections here,
kindergartners come
sections
out of the
there.
woodwork, local private school closes and we suddenly have a ton more kindergartners, those kinds of things that would come forward.
Or IEPs necessitate
Correct,
by law.
Correct. And remember too, I know the board has been very good about recognizing the fact that when it's an IEP driven need, it's not really a do we want to or we have to do those things. Those are requirements that we have to meet.
Okay.
Short of me arguing for lacrosse, right? I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if we have no further questions, then I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the minimum staffing plan for certified staff for 2023-24 as presented.
So moved.
Second. I
Not
know,
all at once.
in a roll. Oh, sorry, a roll call. Please, in just a minute. Sorry. Did we what? I'm trying to get to my right page. Anyway, just go ahead with the roll call.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mrs. Junk,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We will move on now to the approval of the resolutions authorizing reduction in force and honorable dismissal of non-tenured and tenured teachers.
Yep, if you recall, just a few minutes ago, Dr. Atkins shared at the beginning of the staffing plan that based on sectioning and staffing, there are a couple staff that need to be formally reduced, and this is the technical legal side that has to take place.
So again, this is a procedural piece. I'd want the board to know a couple of things. Again, I mentioned with the music teacher and then also with our middle school teacher that's being reduced in force. This is a confluence of registration, enrollment, money, those kinds of things. These people are not being at all considered for this because of cause. This is why it's an honorable reduction in force or a reduction from full-time to lesser part-time. So just to, go ahead,
So they didn't do anything wrong, we just don't have the right number of people in the right spot.
bingo.
Thank you.
The point two for music with Mrs. Cates, were we to have any increase to music at all for which she's certified, she'd have recall rights to that position. So we would absolutely be calling her back. Mrs. Helfers is going from full-time to part-time, but again, were we to get any full-time position for which she's certified, that option would go to her first. We wouldn't interview, we wouldn't post it, she would be placed into it under the law. So the documents that come with this are templates of the letters that they will get. The principals, Mr. Faulkner and Dr. Horn, met with these two staff on Thursday when the board notes went out, because then it was public information. They met with them, walked them through the process, explained what would happen, reassured them how all of that works along with the recall. I spoke to one of them again today, and then they know that tomorrow morning they will get this paperwork handed to them. It's in the sign folder tonight for you. They have to sign a receipt for it. Then they'll get it in U.S. mail, and then they will get it in registered U.S. mail. So they get the same documents 3 different times. It's the law. And then we'll go through the process. And should we again increase either any of the music pieces at the high school or any of the pieces that Mrs. Helfers is certified for, they have absolute recall rights to those positions first. So
And we
pretty-
do often end up recalling these people,
we do often, yes,
so.
probably more often than not.
Any questions from anyone?
Didn't I hear or read somewhere they're thinking about changing the law as far as the notifications of times and whatnot? Or am I dreaming?
I know at any given moment there's several hundred pieces of draft legislation being proposed down in Springfield, and what comes to pass, I've not heard that directly yet myself, but
Thought I read it in an update, but it doesn't really matter to this. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, if we're done, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the resolutions authorizing reduction in force and honorable dismissal of non-tenured and tenured teachers. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mrs. Junk,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Concludes our new business items. We'll move on now to the superintendent and board report. Dr. Layton.
Yes, thank you. Thursday, March 23rd, we have our second, which is our spring. There's, if you recall, there's the fall IASB division meeting, and then there's the spring one. This March 23rd is the spring meeting. It's going to be hosted at Northern Illinois University, and it's on learning loss. It's going to be hosted by 2 MTSS network speakers and specialists who will share a little bit about the learning loss piece, both academically and on the SEL piece. So I'll be attending that one. And if, again, as I've shared in updates, if you have any, if you're available and can attend, let me know. Be happy to coordinate transportation and pay for your registration for that event through the school district. Then shortly thereafter, that same week, we have our spring break. So March 27th through March 31st, returning Monday, April 3rd, is our spring break period. So it's the end of March as typical with the 5 full days off. And then after break, we do have April 7th, that week that we do come back. That Friday is another one of our SIP Institute days, and that day is a building-based day. As we've just recently had our county-wide, which was across the county and across the district, bigger, more varied events to attend. This one on April 7th is just our district, and it's our building-based. So each of the staff will be in their buildings. And then lastly, Wednesday night is our last of our 5 referendum information tours. This is the third of the 3 open house tours. So Wednesday night from 7 to 7:30, 7:45 is the typical presentation with the Q&A, and then we lead the tour afterwards and answer questions as part of the tour of the high school. That will lead to the April 4th election day referendum vote. And we'll also be communicating in the coming week or so. We are going to add 3 tours over spring break. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the spring break, we'll add some additional tours, because on the tours themselves that we've hosted so far, or thus far, there's been positive feedback of actually getting in the building, seeing the locations, seeing the work that needs to be done. So we'll add 3 of those, and again, those will be just the tours. Just gather in by the main office and then go for the tours around the same spots and answer a lot of the same questions. So those were the updates I had for tonight. Thank you.
Okay. I believe early voting has started for
Yes.
elections of all kinds.
Yes.
So,
And April 4th, yes. Great question, or great comment. April 4th is also election day for the Board of Education as well as for the referendum. So it's both of those.
okay, thank you. Dr. Fuchs.
I don't have any tonight, thank you.
Okay. Lindsay? Guess I should say Ms. Yost. to be consistent, Ms. Yost.
Oh my gosh, I'm not that tall. It's all right. All right, here's some updates just at the high school. So on the sports end of things, I just want to say congratulations to Jonathan Paris for competing this past week with Synergy Bowls at IHSA State Jonathan competed in wheelchair basketball, and this was his second year not only going to state, but also winning first in the state 2 years in a row. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. And then also congrats to our track and field team. They took 5th place this last week at the Batavia Track Invite. And then on the fine arts side of things, Kaneland Winter Percussion just had a showcase this past weekend to show their show, which is named Glitch this year. For those of you guys that don't know, Kaneland Winter Percussion is basically, it's only percussion. So instead of all the instruments out there, it's just percussion, and it's like a 5 to 6 minute show that they put together. They have one more competition this year, and this is next weekend in Dayton, Ohio. So we wish them the best of luck with that. And then on the club side of things, just wanted to inform you guys, in about, I don't know, a month and a half now, we have Student Council is holding our 2nd annual Relay for Life event. Relay for Life is an event where students, staff, members of the community walk the track relay style for 24 hours straight. At this event, there's going to be food trucks, music, and games. And through this, we raise money to donate to the American Cancer Society in order to help fight cancer. And last year, we raised over $10,000, and so we're looking to do the same this year. And then on the events ends of things, this past Friday, we had our Mr. Kaneland event. For you guys that don't know, Mr. Kaneland is a fundraiser, and it's basically like a male talent show / beauty pageant style kind of thing where the boys are auctioned off at the end of the night to raise money. And all this money goes to the Kaneland Cares Foundation, which helps families in need in the district. And so I'm proud to say that this Friday we had a record number of people in the audience. It was super fun, and we raised a total of over $3,500. So, yeah, that's all my updates.
Lindsay, did you have a date for the Relay for Life?
April 28th.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought Meg was going to ask her if she had a date for some dance or something. She had a date. And I'm like, I don't think that's appropriate. Just, okay, so sorry. Moving on, thankfully, 2 topics for future agendas. Anyone?
I don't know that it's a topic or a question or comment, but my thought was, can we make high school seniors register to vote as part of a graduation requirement? We have to do the financial aid stuff by law.
Make them, but you can have a like a
graduation
League of Women
requirement.
Voters table.
That would be something that,
Yeah.
right now, we do allow, based on, I think it was a press policy update 2 or 3 years ago, where we have to allow time off for students to vote. But as far as a requirement, we don't have anything in our handbook.
No,
like that.
not that they vote, that they register to be a registered voter.
Oh, as a requirement.
Yeah,
I would have to,
we can't make them vote,
Yeah.
but at least maybe if they
You
were,
can make them register.
make them fill out, we're required to fill out the financial aid.
FAFSA.
Yeah,
Are this
yeah,
required to fill out?
yeah. Just an idea. I don't know that there's 4 people that are, or I don't know that we can even legally do it. We can't legally do
Can I
it,
also
so.
make a suggestion?
But if not a requirement, are there opportunities to have registration tables?
Yeah.
So,
Mrs. Albrecht in the Student Services Office helps kids register to vote when they ask about it. She keeps
I
them
might
all.
suggest on that, there aren't that many meetings left for us,
Yeah.
and that we should leave that maybe to the next
Just a thought.
next group.
You
Also,
know,
anybody coming back?
Teresa, speaking of that, at the last, not election, president, treasurer, our election,
Mhm.
or whatever that's called, we had said we wanted to talk about 2-year terms.
Yes.
You want to put that on a future topic?
as far as a policy, that would be a policy update because it's in policy right now
Right.
that it's annually.
Yeah.
I'm good to do it. I'm all for that because it's very disruptive to change leadership. And when I came in this last time, I can't say, hey, I think it should be 2-year terms, all of a
Right.
sudden when I
I'm gonna,
It seems self-serving, so, but if if we're gonna do it, we need to do it before the reorganization starts to happen, because then the next people will feel the same way, like,
Right.
gosh, we can't bring that up, and,
yeah, see, I would say that that's something we should leave to the newly elected people to decide. But they do the election, the board
they do it
member-
immediately. It's the first thing they
there's
do.
no-
It's May 8th.
They do it right after they're sworn in, so.
I mean, 2-year terms makes kind of sense with the election is every 2 years. There's an election every 2 years. I mean, I don't want to force it on the next board, but
That's where I'm at. I don't have a strong opinion. I won't be here.
Can you explain a little more? Is it to get rid of it? So it's not an option?
It's to change it from a 1-year term to a 2-year term.
so the president would serve for 2 years before you would reelect a new president, the vice president the same, and I guess the secretary position as well.
Thank you.
How, you've done 2 years, Shauna did 2 years before you. What about before her?
Before Sean was Teresa.
It was me,
Was it 2 years?
Did Sheila
and then
before?
Cheryl was before me.
It just seems that we keep
For
with
a
2
couple
years
of 2
because you get 1 year in, you finally have it figured out, and then it's like, well, let's keep with that. But I think every election we think, oh, I don't want to do that because then it's self-serving if I'm the person in.
Mm-hmm. Are there 4 people, I mean, I guess are there 4 people who are interested in doing that before before this board is done and there's a reorganization?
Maybe to back that up just a little bit, like where you say, are there 4 people interested in having that conversation?
Yes.
Before we,
Right.
I'd be open to the discussion.
Okay.
So decision.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I
No,
meant. I didn't mean
no, I
that we
know,
were
but
gonna do it
yeah,
unilaterally.
It came off decision, right? I
Yeah.
just thought maybe,
Yeah,
is it okay?
so,
Are there 4 people having that discussion?
okay.
Okay. And then Ryan's is same thing. Can we have a discussion about
Sure,
Ryan's idea?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
The voting requirement? Or
I think we
registration,
need to
sorry,
check on
registration.
legal requirements for that first. Can
Legally,
you,
Well, we have
like,
our-
legally, we can't.
legally we can't. The district's legal counsel happens to be sitting in the audience. We cannot do that. So,
Asked and answered.
thank you.
Can we,
Well, there you go.
maybe we could just have someone could possibly get the mobile voter fan to show up at the high school at some point?
We can look to that through main office at the high school.
All right,
So the 2-year policy is a yes to bring that back, or bring back the policy
To talk
for at least
about
for
it.
to
discussion.
talk about it.
Okay,
Mhm.
that'll be at one of the April meetings.
And then we can do it or table it, whatever we think is appropriate at the time.
Yes.
Okay, any other topics? Anyone have a burning need? Okay, this is the second opportunity for public comment. Do I have anyone signed in? Okay, so we don't have anyone signed up. Everything that was said before applies now. Are there any public comments? Once, okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. Just 1 second here. So we do have a closed session tonight, and we do not anticipate taking any action when we come out. We are going into closed session to discuss under the Open Meetings Act, exception 2C1 and 2C9. And after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded since there is no action being taken. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please. And it is 8:53.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mr. Mankiski,
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mrs.